I just finished Gregorics by Virgil, a book that is 2,000 years old. It's actually essentially a compilation of poems created by Virgil, who was a farmer back during the Roman ages. And it was a composition that he created to both be an ode to the farmer and the agrarian life, as well as kind of an instruction manual on how to properly farm. While some of the things in the poem, the story, were not necessarily accurate, we know today, were not necessarily correct, we know today, it was still beautiful in its own right. To look back on that and see how they lived back then, the kind of position that they put the agricultural specialist, the farmer, in. And seeing as how today only about 2% of all the population of the world actually participates directly in the production of food, compared to what was 90% back during the time of Virgil, it is something else to think about. But even beyond that, the imagery that you get out of the story is like transcending the ages, the many generations of time, and giving a handshake to the man who lived so long ago. You get a window into his mind, into his soul, in a way that you can only get through such art. It's good. Really good. Teaches you so much. To think that in light of the very short history of humanity relative to the age of the universe and of Earth, and even the age of life on Earth, or even the age of human beings to begin with, civilization has been just a shred of that. And we're tapping into the very beginnings of it all. Only a few steps removed from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the very first epic, the very first story to have ever been written down. Virgil is just next door to that. Created in the same era that the New Testament was created. And it gives you a broader perspective on the lives of those people. It's not simply reading the New Testament, which is something that you should do anyway, and seeing it from the perspective of the apostles and the disciples and Jesus himself, but also from the regular people. And, well, Virgil wasn't regular. He was quite intelligent and fairly well off, but nevertheless, of that time. It is a very strong recommendation from me to read the book. The actual book itself, the actual poem, is only about 100 pages of, relatively average size pages. And it starts off with a pretty in-depth explanation, which is important because we're bridging the gap of thousands of years of language, as well as development and history. And there's also an addendum to the back of it, an index, if you will, that explains all the various terms and all the various gods and all the various social practices of the time. This is something that you should pair with any ancient text, because there are people who study this day in and day out who know a lot more about it than you and I. And they don't have a dog in the fight to be biased. They're going to give you objective information. So it's a very strong recommendation for me to read it.